This week we're looking at number 12 in our series on themes in the book of John, and this one's entitled The Cross and the Resurrection, and I'm just so glad they're linking those two things. All too often when we talk about theories of the atonement, we're only talking about the cross, and that's a big mistake. For as Chuck Scriven says there in the notes, without the resurrection, the cross is just another piece of bad news. And that's true, isn't it? Can you imagine the disciples going out to share the truth about Jesus with the world? And they go out and say, we are preaching to you a crucified person. This is Jesus Christ, the one who was crucified for you. And I'm sure that most people in the Roman world would have said, hey, listen, we've got plenty of crucified people in our jurisdiction, right here where we live, in our region. That isn't the message of salvation. It's not the message of the gospel. The cross leads to the resurrection, and that's where we have our hope. As Paul says, if you didn't have the resurrection, all this would be pointless. Your faith would be vain, he says. So let's concentrate on linking the cross and the resurrection together as the way in which Jesus is working for our salvation. We look forward to being part of Jesus's resurrection, 1 Corinthians 15 and so on, because he died and rose again. That is our hope. We put our faith not only in Jesus on the cross, but the resurrected Lord, the ascended Lord, the returning Lord. Come on, we are Adventists and we look forward to the coming of the one who was crucified and resurrected when he returns to take us home. There's some interesting quotes as well in the notes I've put there, talking about what happened as Christianity went through history. George Fifield, I would say, some people say Fifield, the paganizing of Christianity in the great apostasy in the early ages of the church's history brought a heathen concept of the character of God and a heathen idea of sacrifice, applying it to the sacrifice on the cross. So true. This corrupted and transformed the whole idea of atonement and mediation. He's saying that we, through history, have got a wrong idea of what this is all about. It wasn't Jesus on the cross paying off the Father, or even paying the penalty for justice or something like that. It would be completely improper, could I even say it that way, for God to execute a just, innocent person on behalf of the guilty. We wouldn't allow that in our courts of law. Certainly God wouldn't do that. It's against his whole principle of morality and ethics. So let's look again as to what that really does mean. The notes give us, in our Bible summary, Jesus' trial before Pilate. It talks about the crucifixion there in John 19, along with that sign that Pilate provided saying, Jesus, the King of the Jews, which the Jews said, take that down. He's not our king. The only king we have is Caesar. And that kind of was the end point for them. That sealed their fate, because they have rejected Jesus as God and saying, no, we prefer Caesar. Can you imagine what that is all about? They're also there in John 19, the women at the cross, and Jesus making arrangements for John to care for his mother. An amazing example of the care and concern Jesus had for others. He talks to the thief on the cross. He talks to these, and the words Jesus speaks from the cross emphasize again for me the kind of person he really is. And by the way, I don't think Jesus kind of left it to the last minute to make arrangements for Mary and so on. I think he said this for very important theological reasons. Mary is a kind of a representative of the way it was, the Old Testament. And now, as it moves into the future, John is kind of the New Testament. He wrote such wonderful books, the Gospel and the epistles of John. This is the transformation. And can you imagine the conversations they had at home in John's house when John took Mary in, thinking about what Jesus came to show. Who did he represent? What was it all for? And that's why we get John's gospel, which I would want to say is really something to do with Mary's input into all of that. Well, there's so much to talk about the cross and the resurrection. Please go and think about that, not just today, not just this week, but make it a part of your life. As we're told, spend a thoughtful hour thinking about Jesus and his death and resurrection and what it means to you personally.